Hello, my name is Cass Zegura, and on behalf of my colleagues Ben Shapiro, Robert MacDonald, Jason Borenstein, and Ellen Zegura, today I will be presenting our paper, Moment to Moment, a situated view of teaching ethics from the perspective of computing ethics teaching assistants. This is an in-depth qualitative analysis of the perspectives and identities of teaching assistants involved with computing ethics classes, and we encourage our viewers to read the paper itself for a more full and complete account of our findings. At the core of our work is the proposal that computing ethics teaching assistants are, in their own words, involved with the moment-to-moment of learning computing ethics as an interactual, situated accomplishment between student and instructor, often in instances where students are not interacting directly with professors in the course of learning computing ethics content. We analyze the perspectives of computing ethics teaching assistants, as well as their experiences, responsibilities, and challenges, as well as how such experiences are shaped by the institutional context in which they themselves study and learn and work. Our presentation is divided into 5 parts, beginning with some background information on research in adjacent areas. I'll then discuss our methods and some of our findings before moving on to a higher level discussion of the implications of this research. Let's begin then with ethics. The HCI research community has long centered ethics in its practice and design, recognizing its significance for a field that is so deeply involved with humans as research subjects, users, stakeholders, etc. At the same time, these scholars are often in their home universities involved with the teaching of ethics, again, given the natural resonance between the discipline of HCI and the socio-technical subject matter of computing ethics. Scholars such as Casey Fiesler, Stacey Dorr, Amy Brookman, Ben Shapiro, and many others are very much involved with leading initiatives such as the Mozilla Responsible Computer Science Challenge, which funded this project, developing activities and techniques for teaching discrete subject matters, and refining broader approaches to including computing ethics material in existing CS curricula. At the same time, there is much to be gained from studying the teaching of computing ethics through an HCI research lens. Our work benefits immensely from borrowing from HCI in both its methods, particularly a rich qualitative analysis, and its theories, which I'll discuss now. Our work takes an approach toward teaching as a situative, interactual accomplishment, by moving away from perspectives that focus on the individual cognitive achievements and perspectives of students. Rather, we want to consider the historical and cultural context of learning, considering it to be constituted between learners and their communities, both in the classroom, in the department, in the university, but also the spaces that students come from and return to when they leave the class. Such a perspective emphasizes the interaction between people and their settings. We furthermore take the perspective that teaching assistants are an integral but overlooked part of that community and setting. Although there is a vast and rich body of work around teaching assistants in technical computer science classes, much less work has been done around computing ethics teaching assistants, or CETAs, although we have reason to believe that their experiences would be meaningfully distinct given the uniqueness of their subject matter. With all this in mind, we formulated 3 research questions we wanted to answer with this project. First, what is the experience of those on the front lines of teaching ethics in computer science? 2, how do institutional contexts shape the opportunities, constraints, and challenges of CETAs? And 3, what unique perspectives do they bring to computing ethics education by virtue of their unique positioning between student and experienced instructor? In order to answer these questions, we conducted a series of semi-structured interviews in the spring and fall of 2021, and followed this up with open coding and thematic analysis in the spring and summer of 2022. We recruited interview participants from 2 universities, University A being a large public research university with graduate students as their TAs, and a well-established standalone computing ethics course within its computer science department. University B is a mid-sized private liberal arts university with undergraduate students as its primary TAs, and a much more recently established ethics program that embeds computing ethics content into existing technical courses. We chose these 2 universities both because we had existing personal and professional contacts at them, and because they represented a more diverse picture of what computing ethics education looks like and the context and institutional settings in which computing ethics is taught. And we wanted to be able to draw out those comparisons and contrasts. After doing our open coding and thematic analysis, we divided our themes into 3 rough categories. First, who TAs ethics courses and why? Second, what is the CETA experience? And third, what unique perspectives do CETAs bring to computing ethics education? For the sake of this presentation, I'll be focusing only on the experience of CETAs. Our participants in their interviews reflected on their day-to-day experiences in their jobs and often connected such experiences to the institutional context in which they were working, and we used our analysis to draw out the links between institutional context and experience even further. We also broke down these experiences into the experience of training before the job of being a CETA begins, the support that CETAs received throughout the semester, and the responsibilities of the day-to-day of being what a being CETA looks like. For the sake of this presentation, I'm going to again focus only on these responsibilities as they clearly demonstrate how the experience of being a CETA varies from institution to institution. For University A, for example, our CETAs were TAing for a very large lecture class. As a result, the lecture content was supplemented by discussion sections in order to give students a chance to both reflect on their readings and the lecture material, but also build on their own perspectives and opinions in dialogue with their peers in the class. Our CETAs ran these discussion sections, which were weekly 10-person, 2-hour discussion sections. They had the role of facilitator. They guided the conversation around the subject matter for that week. They also had to ensure that everyone was engaged and participating, and had to shape conversations around more sensitive or personal subject matters, which sometimes arises during discussions around ethics and social responsibility. At the same time, however, they were not just passive facilitators or participants in these conversations, but really instructors, creating a space for students to work out their own ideas, theories, and understandings of what computing ethics means to them personally, developing a personal sensitivity toward the field. And our participants were cognizant of the weight of that responsibility. By contrast, our participants from University B were not engaging with students directly, but rather indirectly through the assignments they were designing that were being integrated into the technical courses that they were TAing for. Our participants reflected on the two ways of going about this task. One is a tacking on approach in which computing ethics questions are sort of slapped onto the end of existing technical assignments, and the other is a more deeper integration in which computing ethics material becomes integral to the project itself. Our participants were shallow of the former approach, but also recognized how it might be necessary given the constraints on their time, their training, their resources, and even at times the receptivity of the professor, sometimes encountering faculty who did not want to make time and space for deeply integrating computing ethics content into their technical courses. Our participants also demonstrated intentionality and reflexivity in how they went about these assignment designs, even soliciting feedback from their students throughout the semester or sharing their project ideas and assignment designs with other CETAs in order to get feedback and to continue to build on their ideas throughout the semester. This and the example of our University A CETAs points to the fact that both participants across both universities were deeply and personally involved with allowing students to develop their own sense of ethical sensitivity around computing technologies throughout the course. To zoom back a little bit more and consider then a broader summary and think about the implications of this work, we really focus in our research around the identities of computing ethics teaching assistants. We understand this identity to be deeply situative, not existing merely in the classroom, but being informed by personal histories and experiences with both computer science and computing ethics, as well as the institutional contexts in which our participants both learned about computing ethics themselves, went on to teach it, and then by teaching it, continued to learn about what computing ethics meant to them personally. These different communities of practice, again, include classes, the department, the degree program, the university, and even prior experiences with research and internships within the tech industry. These identities, experiences, and perspectives were then brought to their teaching practice, informing how they interacted with students through discussion section and assignment design. Given again then the intimacy of participants' interactions with computer science students, we think it's fair to say that CETAs are on the front lines of course design and delivery around computing ethics. They have nuanced perspectives on their responsibilities and their support needs by virtue of being on the front lines and also coming to self-selecting into being CETAs and bringing with them their own nuanced understanding of what computing ethics means and what its education should look like. Given this frontline and complex perspective, CETAs merit more consideration within both academia and research. Their perspectives could be invaluable in designing or even developing entirely new computing ethics curricula, and they also deserve more training and support to prepare them for their unique responsibilities, again, facilitating discussion sections and designing assignments. Furthermore, CETAs should have occupy a larger role in computing ethics education research. Such work could continue to occur across institutions as we did to better understand the variety of CETA experience across contexts and across approaches to computing ethics education, but also should occur within institutions, again, in order to develop and pilot the best possible training and support systems for them. In conclusion, then, our work sheds light on a understudied but integral part of the computing ethics process. We used a situated analysis in order to highlight the experiences and perspectives of CETAs, often relying on their own words and their own understandings of their work. This contributed to a preliminary characterization of CETAs that deserves much more work, research, and attention. We want to finally end then with a call for HCI scholars to play a larger role in studying and designing computing ethics education. Computing ethics is so important for the consciousness and perspectives of future tech workers. As one of our participants put it, quote, "I think the second ever assignment I did genuinely changed the way I saw coding in itself," end quote. Computing ethics education is not an abstract exercise in learning moral philosophy, but has real, intense, and important ramifications for how tech workers will do their jobs in the future. And this work deserves and merits continued attention and research. Thank you.